Okay, it's just me today. Hey, I came down to meet one of the roofers so that they could get a more detailed look at our eyebrow arches up there. And since I'm here, I'm going to stay and have a quiet work day by myself. If you saw our short video, you know that McNatt Construction brought back 2 of our big window frames. The other one just didn't fit in the truck. And a lot of the parts, they are ready to go with installation. And we are now the holdup. So they had taken one window sash with them that needed kind of an extensive repair on one corner. They did that, and then they've added some of the Apatron 2-part epox to fill in this missing piece here that someone in the past chiseled out to put in some kind of metal weather stripping. So I now have to get the rest of these sashes, there's 5 other ones, finished, and they also reglazed and cleaned. This one looks great. They had to take the glass completely out to do the repair. We are not going to take the glass out. They said it was pretty nerve-wracking and didn't really want to do that if they don't have to. So we're repairing everything in place. And I started last week with the Apatron, but I was worried about it sticking. The instructions said I could clean this, which I followed the directions and did, but it just didn't seem to be adhering well, so I stopped and brought the 2-part wood hardener, which this wood doesn't need hardening, but this does help the epoxy wood filler adhere better. So I'm about to mix this up, put in here, and do the rest of the repair here. Once that's done and sanded, then I can prime and do the glazing. Now, I can't move this without help from someone like Heather. It weighs about 100 pounds or so, but I can work on this one in place. Fortunately, it's sticking up in the right direction. It still has a couple of nails in it to pull. I need to finish cleaning this up, give it a good scrub, and put that wood hardener on it. But I can do that in place so that when Heather comes on Friday, or I get some other help that can pick these up, I can hopefully have this one complete and put it aside and put the next one up and just do a quick sand, prime, and get the glazing done. So I'm hoping by the end of the week that I can have all 5 of these complete, but I'm going to go get some little cups and get to mixing to get this hardener in place. Nope, I'm not going to do that. Actually, I need to go finish cleaning that up so I can do them both at the same time. The butterfingers and drop my tools and break any of this glass. So I'm going to go very slow and be methodical, which is not my usual style. These little nails are only about 1/4 of an inch or so deep, but they are surprisingly hard to remove. It took every kind of tool I had, and again, it made me so nervous trying to do this above the glass. I didn't want to drop anything, but eventually I got them all out and was able to move on to the additional prep work. My finger under here to keep from sliding off into the glass. So this is just tedious. I'll get some sandpaper in hand, sand that a little bit before I put the hardener on. Doing fine detail work is not my strong suit. I much prefer big power tools, and this takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. Fortunately, it is on the outside way up high, so I don't have to be perfect, but it's still tedious and has to be done correctly, and I just much rather move on to something else, but I am the holdup in getting these things done, so today there was no choice. Alright, it's going to be pretty hard to do this without waste because I need just the tiniest amount of this. So I've got 2 cups. I'm just going to use this first little line as my measure, but this is really easy. You just need equal parts. It's not even enough to cover the bottom of the cup. We'll just go with barely covering the bottom of the cup. That's part A. Put part B in a separate cup just to measure. Plastic knife to stir with. Alright. And you just stir the heck out of this. Okay, and I just have the cheapest of children's craft brushes. I'm going to throw it away. And then need to carefully paint this. You can see it didn't really use much of anything, so I have a lot left. I'm just going to, well, when I get done, I'm going to come back and paint it in some of these areas. So this is a little bit interesting where that weird primer was. This 2-part epoxy is actually dissolving it. And if you remember, we tried multiple kinds of wood or a paint stripper on there and nothing touched it, but chemically it's reacting with this epoxy. Okay, I have these guys done, and they probably need to sit and dry for at least a couple of days given the temperature. So I am going to head down into the chauffeur's quarters and do some chores down there. Okay, I've been down here for a while moving lumber. I didn't think y'all needed to see that again. You saw Heather and I move all those 2x4s in here a while ago because it was raining. We need to get them inside to do work, but now the work is finished over here. We don't need any more untreated lumber on this side, so I've been moving it over to the other side, and I'm going to try to clear out this area. Heather's trying to come again this Friday. I had planned on working some more on sanding and priming that kitchen sink cabinet, but that's something she can do without any help from me. So I'm going to set that aside and leave that for her. And I'm going to keep doing other things that I need to get done. But one reason I wanted to clear out here is we have to do a lot of work on these windows, and they're in really good shape. They're 100 years old, but they work fine, but they've been painted over several times, and we've started stripping the wood. You can see some of the trim is missing here. We have it stored under the house on the other side, but we do want to take these side pieces off to access the weights, take everything apart, get all this hardware in a crock pot and stripped and polished up, and get everything stripped down to the bare wood and redone, reglazed, and get these back in so that they're in working order. And then also take off these burglar bars and see if we can find somebody who can donate some services to sandblast those so we can repaint those and get them back on. But we have 3 windows in here in the basement that are the newer single hung sash windows. The rest of them are those, I don't know what you call them, but they open this way with hinges on the side, and you saw Heather and I getting all the hardware off on that. Those are going to be more problematic to put back up because they need all new frames and a lot of work, but these, like I said, are in great shape. That's something we can knock out and do figure out how to get this paint off the wall in the ceiling, and this room will be close to being done. I'm always very optimistic. In my mind, we're almost there, but probably months to go. But this is kind of work we can do when it's rainy outside, so we'll have it on standby. I decided I needed to use my little blower to blow out all the cracks and crevices of the window. It was full of dust and paint chips. And yes, I did put on a mask for this. I have learned through the years that you can't use a blower without wearing a mask. It's not just like normal dust in the air. It pushes it at a very high velocity, and it can drive it deep in your sinuses, and that's really not good, especially if something that can be a biological hazard. That's even worse than plain dust. But it does work well to clean out little cracks like this. It's a handy little thing. It just uses the same battery as my drill, and it's so compact, it's nice to have. I then turned my attention to that upper cabinet that Heather and I had sanded last time. I decided to go ahead and get a coat of primer on that so it could dry and we could re-sand it again when Heather came next time before putting a final coat of some kind of paint on it. I still haven't selected colors down here. I don't know what I'm going to use, but all of the priming work and prep work we can do and have ready to go when we are putting this apartment together at the end and deciding on finishes. I still have to research wall finishes. I'm thinking if I get it all stripped, we'll do just a traditional lime wash, which is something I haven't used before, but it should work well on this stucco down here on the wall. So there's research that needs to be done on that, and we're fortunate that there's a gentleman in Galveston who specializes in historic paintings and coatings and decorative art. So we want to reach out to him and see if we can get some advice on the house. This was not the greatest thing to paint. I probably should have stood it up and rotated it around like Heather and I did to sand it. I spent a lot of time laying on the ground painting, but I just was not in the mood to get my hands all gunky with the paint because once it's wet, it's hard to maneuver. So I just did it the old-fashioned way, and I'm shocked I didn't get any paint on me. I'm usually not a very neat painter, but I forgot to wear my painting clothes, so I didn't want to get messy. So I did try to be careful. I think I succeeded. That might be a first for me, not to be covered in paint. I love hearing the sound of the weed eater and the lawnmower. And I particularly love that I'm not mowing this myself with that old push mower anymore. That was a horrible chore. But the yard is stump free and this guy can really move now. Looking great. Okay, so I am ready to prime this window. My Avatron 2-part wood epox dried. I've got it sanded. I have a few little places that aren't smooth, but I'm not going to waste this on that. I'm going to go ahead and prime that and come back with just some regular wood filler and smooth that out. I've got the big repair made, and this stuff has actually got some structural integrity to it. You can drill it and shape it after it's dry. I filled in a few other little nicks in the frame, but I've got it all cleaned out. I did get all of that old glazing compound. Oh my gosh, every time I look, I see a little bit that I want to get out. Okay, I need to just stop. I need to just stop fiddling.
You realize this is where you're going to break the glass.
I know. Okay, I'm going to stop fiddling. I've blown it out. But let me show you a couple of things about glazing points. So I showed you before these.
This is why we should plan what you're going to do.
These triangle glazing points that are in there. And I want to make sure they're pushed down and not sticking up, because I'm going to put the glazing in and it needs to ride on top of that. Now I'm missing one up here that came out, but I don't think I need it. But if I did, these are glazing points. I'm over here close by, and they're just a little bitty. Oops, there's one. Oops, well, there they go.
There's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them. They're a little bitty point. I'll show you how they go in the wood. That you lay down and then you push into the wood. Now that's easier said than done. I don't generally like to use these because they do have these little bends so that whatever you're pushing with has something to grasp. If you're doing real fine window work, sometimes those stick up farther than the edge of this rabbet, and when you glaze, they get in the way. Now you can get just these shaped or diamond shaped and put them in with what I have here is a glazing hammer. And I've done this before, that's why I have the hammer, but it's a little scary. I'm not going to demonstrate on the window. What you do is you put your point down, the hammer rests on the window glass itself, and you slide and hit the edge of the point and put that in. But I'm not getting this anywhere near these windows. I do not want to break this curved glass. But the next step is to get ready for the glazing. I need to prime the inside of this rabbet here so that the glazing compound will stick. And I talked to you before about that when we talked about our glazing, that it's linseed oil and calcium carbonate basically. And if the wood is dry, it will suck that linseed oil out too fast and cause damage to the glazing. So you can either oil it with linseed oil or prime it. I'm going to prime it since I have oil-based primer here, and I need to prime these windows anyway. But this dries super fast, and then we'll come back with the glazing this afternoon, and hopefully this window will look like that window by the end of the day. So only 4 more to go. So this is that same primer that Heather and I had downstairs, and it's a little gunky. It needs to be used up. If it gets trashy, I can just lightly sand off any bumps. But I'm going to try. I always wrap my brushes and rollers up. You can use them for several days. This is a little bit big and it's not in great shape. I don't really want to get a lot of this on the glass, so I'm going to try and see what I can do with it. But if it gets on the glass, I'll have to go get a smaller fine brush. But I can at least use it on the bigger parts of the window. And it's easier for me to see sometimes to put a coat of primer on, then some of the little divots and imperfections show up. You can tell where you might need to sand a little bit more. So I just do a real thin layer of this. It'll help with the glazing, but then I can come back if I need to and do a little bit more work on this. Now this is going to be outside and 30 feet off the ground, so I don't know that anybody will notice that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but on the inside, obviously we'll want a much better finish. And I don't know where my tape is, but I could maybe do this. Let's see. At least where the glass is straight. A little hard with those glazing points in there because this is not seating all the way down to the glass, but it is helping. The goal is to glaze so I can let that dry and then get these stood up and get the next one up on the, oops.
Safety violation.
Safety violation up on the table to work on. You saw on the video, I worked on that one against the wall and it's not sanded very well at all. I need to get it on the table so I can finish it, but at least the big part of it is done. So when it is time to do that, it should be a pretty quick process. It feels so nice to paint something and have it start looking better. We've waited so long for these windows to come back. Look at that. Makes a big difference. Oops. All right. We'll edit. That wasn't the sand. No, that was, I just stepped on the cord. It was round and it rolled. Kick it under the table. We normally don't leave cords laying out because we're doing tours, so I usually sand and pick them back up, but nobody's here right now, so I thought I would just try to quickly get this done. And I don't know if my method will work here too well. So that glass is curved. Fortunately, Joe has lots of razor blades from scraping the floor, so if I do get it on the glass, when it dries, I'll come clean it up. And normally, oops, we'd take this out, remove all these, take this out, clean the whole frame, and put it all back together, but I said I am not doing that with this curved glass. This will have to be good enough. And normally I read not to paint this little lip that slides, but McNatt painted theirs, so I'm going to just copy what they did. Oh, look, okay, notice how this slid in there. That's that upper groove I was telling you about. So there's a groove in this. We don't use glazing up here. The window slides in that groove, so it's actually seated into the window frame on the upper end. And no moisture gets in there because that's on the top. So maybe humidity will affect it, but water's not going to run in there because that will be facing up. And I did go ahead and fill where the latch was because they bought some brand new brass latches. I don't know if the holes line up exactly, so I just went ahead and filled just to be sure. Well, that is that. We'll let that dry for a couple of hours before I come back and do the glazing. Oh, I didn't get up there. Okay. Now I think I've done it. I'm going to put this back in the bag. And I get those brushes from the dollar store. They're 3 for $1, so they're 33 cents a piece. So I use one for about a week with the bag method and then just throw it away. And they're great for rough work like this. Oh, I didn't paint. Joe! Why didn't you tell me? She wasn't good. It's Joe's fault. We've already established.
I just assumed you didn't want to.
I have a bad cold. My grandkids came to visit a couple weekends ago, and my husband got a horrible cold. He was sick for about 8 days, and I thought I had missed it, but I think I got it from him. So my brain is a little out of it today. And I put a little wood hardener in there. I may let that dry a while before priming that. I've used the liquid part that strengthens wood, so we'll just let that sit. But this is good enough to get the glazing done, which is the big thing we need. Our oil-based primer is dry. You can see the little imperfections here I need to hit with another filler, but for the most part, everything's good. I did take Joe's razor blade and scrape and clear the paint off the glass, and I did hit it with a sander just because that primer was pretty gunky. And now I'm just going to clean the glass and get rid of any dirt. It's a little dirty. They might be dirty. A little dirt. And check as I'm doing that one more time the points to make sure that they're pushed down as flat as they can be. Because basically what you do is you put the putty in and put it at an angle, and so you don't want them sticking up so that they end up outside that putty. It interrupts your bead. And that may be some of that wood hardener I may have dripped. I have it, and I'll just wipe everything down. Okay, now while that's drying, I'll see if our glazing putty needs any prep. Sometimes when you open this, the linseed oil has separated. Kind of like if you buy natural peanut butter. Yeah, you can see the linseed oil on top, that oily film. And they're all like that to some degree. Okay, all my stuff is dirty here. Now, some people like to use a stiff blade. I like to use a flexible blade. I find I have better control. And there are a lot of ways to do this, but it's messy. So the first thing we're going to do is just knead it up and work that oil back into it. Ooh, it smells bad. At least I can still smell. I've got a horrible cold. I'm just going to give that. And that's pretty sticky, actually. It's kind of like a wet Play-Doh. Once I've got it kind of conditioned and all that back in there. Sometimes you see people make a rope, oops, out of it, just like when you were a kid, and lay it in there. I've seen others that do it kind of like the bakery when they're doing rolls, where they just take their finger and push it in. There's no right or wrong way to do this. What you want to do is make sure it's seated in there well, and that you have enough so that when you take that knife and come back at an angle, this is a little sticky, but you have a nice smooth bead in there. Now, one problem I tend to have with smaller windows is the reveal on the rabbet. If you make this bead too wide, it'll show from the inside. Now, this is a big window. It has a very wide rabbet, and we need this to help hold the window in. So what I just did right there is too small. I'll just show you a little sample. I'm going to add some more, and this time not hold my blade so sharp, hold it a little wider. And make this edge right at that rabbet, or that reveal, so that it's as wide as it possibly can be, but not showing from the back side. You can see how tedious this process is, so we're going to stop for today. We're out of time. Be sure and turn on your notifications and subscribe, because we are really picking up the pace at this house. There are a lot of exciting things happen, and you don't want to miss these beautiful windows going in. We will see you back next week here at the League-Kempner house in Galveston, Texas.